Hey, welcome to In the Chute, where I answer questions, right or wrong. And Calen, you have to really correct me much, but maybe he's not afraid of me anymore. He's too old, and I'm getting I'm getting too old. What do you got, Calen?
Direct to consumer process. I know some people they ask questions. It's more of the buzz these days of direct to consumer process, especially when it comes to beef, because it has gotten so expensive the last 2 or 3 years. So, what exactly is the process from the birth of the animal to the steak on your plate? How does it work? How long does it take if you are going direct to a producer or from us direct to a consumer to sell or purchase the beef that people might get on their plate at dinner on the end of a weekend or something like that?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Well, and the way we do it is we shorten that process a little bit, and it's kind of a niche that we're not really creating it. It's just we're trying to time it. And
Yeah.
so we tend to calve our cows out in the early March, mid March through the end of April, first part of May, first week in May. If we can get them all done in that 60-day period, that's great. That's what we're shooting for. We're trying to hit good weather so these cows don't lose a lot of weight. Calves are able to you know, milk or nurse off of a cow that's producing a lot of milk because it's warming up and they're starting to hit some green grass. And we're avoiding hopefully a lot of death loss on some early storms. So you get that calf raised, spends the summer on summer grass, and of course we're very fortunate in that most of our pastures or what we utilize, except for one really, is all fresh spring water. It's water running up out of the ground, and it is fantastic water. They get all they want. We're not having to feed through a well and or water through a well and maintain some nice fresh water for them. One spot is, but that's for a very short time early on. Um, we get down to the end of summer and fall time. These calves are getting to where, you know what, they're marketable to a uh, backgrounder, or somebody put them on grass at a 500-600 pound calf, upper fives, hopefully where we're at, 600 pounds, and then they hang on to them. We do the same. We get rid of most of them. We do keep the ones back that we're going to sell direct, and I put them on solid, just grass hay, straight grass, and it's generally the steers that we keep. Now we got two different classes there. If we wean, we keep these steers however we think we're going to need or have orders for, and then maybe a couple of more in case other people want some. Then they're feeding out, they're being weaned essentially, and we're keeping them in a pasture separate and inside of a corral where they're on full feed. All they want to have on the good grass hay and all the water they want from that spring. So about the same time or shortly after that, after we've gone to market and putting these guys in the corrals, and you can call it a feedlot, it's really not. We're not set up like that, not a high production place, but um, we preg test. And then if we have any first time heifers that are open or not pregnant, then they are 2 years old at that point. So, or just a hair over 2 years old. And so we have them available for someone who wants a slaughter animal that's just a slight bit bigger. They're 24 to, by the time we would go in the springtime, 24 to 30 months old. And so they're available through the winter, spring, whenever I can feed them up, or somebody wants them. And that way we have that availability that time of year. Then the steers continue through the winter once they're weaned, and they're kicked back out with the cows. Then they essentially winter. Then during the spring, they go out on summer pasture and they just get a little bit fatter. Get them up there to about, 800-900 pounds, a little more than that, 850, 900, and then bring them in the fall again with everybody else when we wean those other steers, the small steer calves. Now these guys are at about 18 months old, and I put them on my feeding regime the daily rations, daily feed, and you got a date with a butcher who, you just time it so that at 18 months or so, you've got a steer ready to go. Hopefully in the summertime or spring, by that time, you've already had that heifer fed out and she's gone to somebody's plate. But the steers are ready. They're kind of put at different times. I, start that feeding process and keep them separate uh, based on what their feed consumption is. You don't just dump out a bunch of feed for them. You got to warm them up. You got to start slow and build them up to where they can, take that higher protein um, and the little hotter feed, those grained feeds that they're going to deposit a lot of fat on. So um, the reason we do that at 18 months on the steers and then of course the 2 years is we're just utilizing a heifer that is not going to produce a calf. For us, it's that way, and it produces something that's a full grown animal for someone else. When you strip that hide off and take those entrails out and you got a carcass there, I can't tell whether they're a heifer or a steer. Maybe a butcher can, but they taste the same. There's really not much of an issue there. The steers at 18 months have a little bit smaller bone growth. They're a smaller animal overall. You're looking at rail weight of about 650 pounds, 700 pounds at the most. Has been our experience where we're raising them at because of the age and the calving date that year and a half before. So you get less bone growth, you get a lot of good meat, you get smaller amount of meat that you can afford. Because let's face it, when you're paying for a carcass that is 1,400 pounds, 1,500 pound steer, which is a little bit overdone, try to target that 1,400, and then you knock the head, hide, guts, and legs off of it. Now you've got a carcass that is a whole heck of a lot heavier. You're paying, another 100 pounds of meat or 150 pounds worth of meat is a significant cost, especially if you're buying a whole animal. So we try to make them just a little bit smaller. You're not paying for as much bone; it's mostly meat, and not having to put as much out for the entire carcass weight. And that's why we do that. It's just a kind of a little niche market, but it's it's word of mouth basically too. And sometimes the logistics, you have people that are way far away, other states, and they have asked to buy our beef, and we'd love to sell it to them, but that's the whole idea partially behind ranch to plate locally, is that you're helping your local people.
Mm.
And the shipping for us to get that to them, they couldn't afford the meat at that point.
I was
And
gonna
so
say, just
really
you guys
discouraged.
shipped beef from Montana to Kentucky for me, our own locally raised, our own stuff, and it cost more just in shipping to me than it did the
Yeah,
actual meat itself to get it here.
yeah.
But the other question was, and you kind of alluded to it, but not quite, how and when do consumers contact the ranch, or is it the other way around? Does the ranch contact consumers that are known and they want to get them the product?
Well, I don't watch people's freezers. And so people will contact us, and unless it's like a family member or something that's like, hey, are you ready for this? And your mom's family, her side of the family has, this last year especially, I mean, there was a bunch of them went together and they took either halves or quarters and divvying that up, and that's great.
That's
uh
how I think it should be. If you get a
yeah,
group of three or four friends or family members and say, hey, let's just go thirds or
yeah,
quarters on a beef and that'll last us for the year and then you come back, that's a fantastic way to do it.
it's a great way to do it, and it's even less cost for
Right.
somebody to be able to do that, because then you're paying, let's say, 150 pounds of meat versus carcass weight versus say 600. Say it's a full animal's a light animal. Say it's 600 pounds on the
Right.
carcass, and you're putting that into four pieces. That's a whole lot more affordable, and that's exactly right. It's nice for people to do that. Happy to do it. They can divide it up any way they want. You can't take a half an animal. You gotta slaughter a full animal. So and people will find if they want their beef and they like the beef, you'd be surprised. They'll talk to other people and have them buy a quarter. And it's great. It's really good to do that. But yeah, the shipping on that is Oh, I think you actually said thanks for the meat, but don't ever do that again.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't
And
ever
we
do
thought
it
you
again.
needed some fresh meat after you got back from Afghanistan.
Yeah. The last thing is a people get attached to the critters. We've called them T-bone, sirloin, cankles, Frida the freeloader. I'm sure there's gonna be plenty more coming. The question is, do you ever name them, or share the names with people, or is it much like the cows where we just call them, other than a couple special ones like ears or Rhonda and
Right.
stuff like that? Is it just number one, number two, number three, number
Yeah, it's
36, number
whatever their ear
whatever?
tag is.
Yeah.
And my cousin, they bought a heifer from us, and she didn't want to know what color it was even. I mean, they know we run reds, but she wanted to didn't even want to know an ear tag number. Nothing about her. I mean, that's just the way she is.
Oh,
And
Robin.
she's one of the kindest people. She's from the time we were little kids. She has always taken in, orphaned animals, orphaned wildlife, and raised it. And that's she's just a very kind individual. She's a tough girl, but she's very kind. And she just wouldn't, and doesn't want to know what it looked like. Nothing. It's like, okay, I can respect that. I understand it. So, um, you know, Braden's girlfriend Bailey is just kind of the same way.
That's funny.
We saw her and Bray the other night when we delivered that heifer for somebody else, and went and had dinner with them. And I told Calen or Braden, I said, hey, that heifer has to get slaughtered tomorrow. And he goes, don't tell her. So, and she says she's never eaten more meat in her life until she's
Oh
come around
yeah.
to us.
Well,
So,
welcome to the clan. All
but
right.
yeah, other people, they want to know what they're getting. They would love to know from the time it's a calf and watch its progression until it's slaughtered, to see where it's at, where it's been, how it's treated. And I'm okay with that too. I mean, that's up to them.
Which we have some plans for that when we get a little bit more sophisticated website. But until then, yeah, we'll just keep that documentation close. If people ask
Yeah.
for it, we can always provide it. But
Yeah.
we're very transparent about that thing. But it's essentially from birth to slaughter, anywhere between 18 to 24 months, either steer or a heifer, sometimes a virgin bull based off the circumstances, just meaning it's a bull that hasn't bred. But from experience, it tastes just as good, sometimes maybe a little bit better than the steers, but you're also paying more because it's going to pack on some weight a little faster. So,
Yeah, you get more muscling because of the hormones, but they're just a bull, and generally those are 18 months because they get pretty big pretty fast.
yep.
And if you're looking for a lean piece of meat, a very very lean piece of meat, that would be the way to go. And if you're into super lean meat, like venison style, um, a virgin bull that is not finished on grain, just grass fat would be phenomenal. It's going to be a little bit more tough. It's not going to be quite as juicy because it's all meat. There's not near as much fat in the marbling. But if that's what you're looking for, we can build that too. And the last few years, that's what we've done is done our bulls for our own consumption. These young bulls. We'd never done that before, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to have a piece of meat for sale
Right.
unless I've tried it myself and can tell you what that's like. I just don't think that's right unless you know what you're getting and know what you want. But oftentimes people don't, and they'll say, "Why would I want that?" And so I can tell them why now. And
Right.
I'll tell you what, you can get a lot of meat, and it's just as tender, um, and it's damn good tasting.
That's our whole process from birth to the plate for beef production and direct to consumer or direct from producer, which is us, sales. So with that, we'll take the conversation and put it out to pasture.